All right. All right, 10 seconds to go. I feel the suspense in the air.
Justin, you brought the fireworks, right? It can be really awkward if you didn't.
Jazz, flute, and pyrotechnics.
That's it.
All right, guys, we are officially live. Yeah, today is going to be a little different than the usual lives that we get. Yeah, we got some ninjas here. We got Charles Needham with us today and Justin Michael, who are like OGs when it comes to cold calling. And cold calling is going to be the topic for today. And yeah, guys, I'm going to let you give a quick intro about yourselves, and then we can slowly kick things off.
Awesome. Charles, break it down, man. Eminem style freestyle. I'm ready.
I've been taught to respect my elders, my friend. We will go chronologically.
Oh wow, intro, right? I remember the year was 2001. I was 21 years old, and I thought I need to get a job. And there was this call center out near UCSB, the university in Santa Barbara, where I think they do a little studying sometimes, and a lot of telemarketing at the time. And I sat down on the phones there at 21, and I wasn't that good as a salesperson on the phones, but there was these kind of 4 top dog ballers type of people who used to go to Vegas. I remember their names. This one guy, Rich Nunez, another guy, Dave Heinen, used to golf with Tiger Woods. So I'd go to the driving range and he hit the ball and it would take off like a UFO. Like everyone would just look at it. But I say this because they were excellent in other areas of their life. And they were pulling like, $9,000 a week, like serious money in 2001. That was real money. I mean, it wasn't the gold standard necessarily, but it went a lot further. I was like, I got to be like these guys. So I started getting up at 3 a.m. every day and driving out there and emulating everything they did. And within like 6 months, I was one of the top 5 reps. I was like the 5th baller at the company, top 10 in 10,000. The average tenure of this job was 2 weeks. And I did that for 4 years. So I could start there.
So you overstayed.
Yeah. So it was weird.
Yeah,
I didn't know any better.
24 years later, there you are. So like what I forgot to mention is that you guys have launched a series of books, and one of them very recently, Algo, Cold Calling Algo. And I know it's taking off really, really well. I see it on Amazon everywhere. I see it doing really well. So yeah, I mean, I take it you've kind of like started sharing all the knowledge you gathered throughout all your years of experience.
It's not really doing that well. I'm just spamming the living hell out of every single person myself. Nothing else is happening. Charles, how would you introduce this?
Well,
I won't quite agree because I did see that it is #1 on Amazon news sellers.
Alex has gotten like 10 messages himself already.
True.
I'm surprised it's only 10, Justin.
True,
you're slipping.
I mean, you spammed it to #1.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I come at this from a kind of an interesting perspective in that I had a job. So I went to school for economics, I went to school for finance, and really the question for everybody graduating from my college was, okay, you have a big decision now to make in your life. Do you want to go to finance? Do you want to go to consulting? Or do you want to go to public policy? I didn't play super well with the rules, so consulting was out, public policy was out, and so finance it was. And while I was in finance in New York, I spent too much time watching Terminator. And it occurred to me that with the development of technology, that my role and many roles like it would soon one day be gone. And so I sat down and sort of reverse engineered, okay, what will be the last stronghold for the machines to take? And out of that, I concluded that sales would be the right one. And naturally, my parents were horrified. All my friends thought I'd lost my mind. And I went deep into, Grant Cardone, Jordan Belfort, and I was like, something's still not quite right with what I'm reading here. And so then one fateful day, I received a copy of Tech Powered Sales, and I opened the first page, and there's a quote from John Connor about Skynet from this guy, Justin Michael. And I'm like, okay, I found it. And 3 years later, here we are.
Awesome. Awesome.
Well, I can, you know, play the flute here with pyrotechnics. We, Ron Burgundy style, get up on the desk. But I'm 45 years old, so I was born in 1980. So anything after 1990, I don't remember much culturally. So I keep all my references pre 1990 Reagan era years. But I will say I've sold for 25 years, and it was from the gutter to the stars. My high school guidance counselor, I think I took jazz band and fashion design. She's like, "You're really not going to amount to much. Like, I don't know how you're going to feed yourself. You better go to City College and get some credits," right? And I ended up by 31 getting to Salesforce. I worked for Sean Parker, and then by 35 I built my own method. And then I was that weird guy in tech companies, like, "Oh, he has a method." Like, well, and then it started to work, this method, and some VCs came in and wanted to, do this contest for who the best SDR on earth was, and thousands of people applied, so Willy Wonka style, and I won it. And I flew to this VC apartment in San Francisco, and it's just like a scene in Silicon Valley. For 4 hours, I explained all my outbound techniques. And then, that company built up and sold, and I ended up making some of the highest pay as a VP of SaaS, and worked for Salesforce and LinkedIn, the Empire State Building. And at 40, I went into consulting. So the last 5 years, I've written 8 books, 7 in my name, and coached about 1,000 people, worked with 200 different teams. And along the way, I met Charles, and he started, helping me with the books and models and editing. And when I thought about what's the only effective channel right now with clients, the last 200 companies that I've worked with, phone, not one is not leading with phone.
Yeah.
And then, I say this on different pods, but Tech Powered Sales in 2021 predicted that 70% of top funnel could be automated, but it's probably going to go down because of regulation, not because of technological impossibility. And that's not a word, but in England, I love it. Technological. I'm just going to say it. Technology, technological. I don't know. But where I'm going with this is, if you want to email, it doesn't work. You can't email from one email account. You need like 30 email accounts or 50 email accounts to get the volume. If you want to cold call, well, that doesn't really work because 40 to 50% of the data is bad. If you want to automate social, you can do a good job scraping the data. There's really good products like Expandy. Definitely dig that. But LinkedIn
I hope
itself,
Infox as well. I mean, come on.
yeah, exactly. Infox. However, LinkedIn still hasn't opened its API. So you're doing the best you can to scrape the data to get signals. And so we have this weird Frankenstack where we try our best to do the automation. All that being said, the phone is still alive and well. And the company that Charles works at, TitanX.io, will basically give you a list of who picks up. And there's other vendors that are channel validated and human verified. So if you know so if I want to get to you, Alex, and I know that you sort of answer email, but your cell phone's the way to go, or direct line's the way to go, then I have a much higher propensity to call you. Then I don't really have to use the parallel assisted dialer. Like, if I have your actual cell and I know it works, do I need to call you from 4 different local area optimized phone numbers 5 times a day? Not really.
Honestly, like that this really resonates with me. So like, I have some cold calling experience, like in a sense where I've managed like in-house a small cold calling team of like 3-4 people, where we were doing it for like 3 or 4 months. And honestly, it was like a more of like a swing and the miss for me. And like, I did like hit some like technological barriers, for example, or technological barriers for me. Like, the biggest issue I had was, or that my team had, was that the leads that we were calling, and we were confident that these are good leads. So we were confident in the data, but they were not picking up. No. Mm-hmm. And we would go through hundreds of calls, and like, we would do like, let's do speed dialers. Let's get these locally optimized area codes so that we can get a better pickup rate. But we just like weren't able to really succeed in getting those initial pickups. So like, how is that I take it this is quite a common problem that you guys hear happening, like what do you have to say to that?
I hear my name being called, Justin. Somebody says people have issues with pickup rates. I appear, especially if you say my name 3 times in the mirror. In any case, Alex, your experience is not uncommon. So at Outreach Unleashed this year, there was a really interesting slide where a survey was done of the BD leaders there of what was the most pressing issue when it came to cold calling efficacy as a channel. And 51% of those people said that it was actually getting somebody on the phone. And so if we break this down from a first principles perspective, there's really a couple subsets of that problem. So the first, and you and I talked about both of these things before we jumped on, is having your numbers marked as spam. So similar to what's going on with email deliverability, where people are trying to figure out how the major email providers are screening for spam right now, the phone carriers are doing the same thing. So there's this sort of weird cat and mouse game happening with telco providers and cold callers, where these the telco providers are standing up different algorithms to look at behavior and mark your numbers as spam accordingly. So one of those things is volume, one of those things is call duration. But what's happening is when people are sort of feeding their own problems the way email outreach has done the same thing. So people aren't reaching people on the phone. So what do? They start parallel dialing. And then what that does is it increases the volume, which then flags the numbers as spam. And then it becomes this vicious cycle, right, where people are seeing that and then they're just repeating the process with even more volume. And so what we found is that on one hand, you have number deliverability, aka keeping your number clean, and some sort of general guidelines we found around that. There's a few things you can do. So no more than 10 dials per hour per number, and then no more than 80 dials per day. So you hear that, and I'm thinking, my God, that doesn't sound like very much, right? Which then leads to the second component, which is that you want to call people who have a high propensity to pick up the phone, which may sound obvious, but what we found is that if you take any given population, about 80% of people will absolutely never pick up their phone. It doesn't matter how many times you call them, what number you call from, what time of day it is, they're just not going to pick up. And I'm sure you know people in your life like this. And then there's a smaller subset of the population, about 20%, who will happily take a cold call. But the problem is, unless you know who those people are, what can you do but call everybody? And when you call everybody, you run into issues with numbers going to spam, and then you create all these other problems, which we saw with email, right? Email essentially committed suicide because of volume. And so people are now doing the same thing with the phone, which is tragic. But in any case, if you know the people,
it's a good parallel.
Yeah, but if you know who picks up the phone, you don't need that much volume. And then your numbers don't get marked as spam. And then now you have a virtuous cycle where you're establishing good credit with your numbers because you're calling people who pick up. They pick up, your numbers start showing better. And so you kick off that virtuous cycle, one, by having clean numbers and not abusing them with volume. And two, by calling people who have a high propensity to pick up the phone. That's the way out.
So how do you scale in that case? So let's say so you said 80, no more than 80 calls per day per phone number. So then how do you scale? Do you scale by having multiple phone numbers per rep? How many cold calls do you expect a rep to do in a day? So just share some of those benchmark numbers for I'm interested in hearing, because I know what I was asking my team to do. So this is kind of seeing it kind of a reality check for me, if what I was expecting was realistic, or if it was too much or too little.
Sure. So I can give you some benchmarks, and a lot of this is informed by the bridge group. But the bridge group identified that the average SDR makes about 50 dials per day. What we've seen is that there's a roughly 3 to 5% connect rate if you're calling into the US. And to me, it's a little bit higher, but benchmark 5% in the US. So that means you're getting anywhere from 2 to 3 pickups per day, right? Or actually even less, 1 to 2 pickups per day. And then that means over the course of a week, you're having anywhere from 5 to 10 conversations. And at a 10% meeting book rate, you're booking 1 meeting a week. And so what we show people is if you just take that same amount of dialing and you call people who pick up the phone, then you get closer to a 20 to 30% connect rate. So now you're talking to 10 or 15 people per day instead of 1 or 2 people, and you're booking more 1 meeting per day. So that would be what we would consider an optimized funnel. And really at the end of the day, it's a targeting exercise, right? It's not super dissimilar from what people are already doing. Everybody already targets on some basis. You work with a company that uses a certain tech stack, so you're using intent data to ascertain whether the company has the tech stack. And so the next logical progression from that is, once you have the people you want to target, the next thing is, where can you get in touch with them? And if you identify the subset that picks up the phone and you just call them, all of a sudden you're able to scale a lot better. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does 100%. Like, so you were talking about like Terminator machines. Strike. It's just like the first thing that comes up to me right now is AI. Because we see AI or the machines being more and more active, but like it's more like they're more like assisting us in being more successful in these kind of outreach efforts. I know how we use AI for cold emailing, for LinkedIn outreach, to generate like unique messages, unique copy based on lead data that we have. But like, how do you guys use AI to basically empower your cold calling efforts or your data collection or whatever? It would be awesome if we could like give us some more insight into that.
Well,
without buying your book.
Buy the book. Buy the book. No, I'm just kidding. Review the book. We like that. We like reviews. We like reviews. Sorry. Okay. Where are we going here? Oh, so there's really 3 core theses, thesis plural, that led to this book. It's fun when Charles and I get together because I'm the son of a linguistics PhD and he actually went to school and learned this stuff. So we can basically speak Klingon at this point. 1, right, we have the technology problem. We have the restriction. 2, we have the fact that, strangely, people that actually go close 6 and 7 figure enterprise deals, there's no book on top funnel. There's only full cycle books for that. It's really weird. Like, go to the market, find books on how do you start 6 and 7 figure enterprise complex deals, and it's like crickets, except for some of my stuff, which often doesn't appear on lists. So we endeavored to say, if you're going to do a cold call outbound effort implementing AI, how do you do it enterprise grade at the C level, 6 and 7 figure deals, multi-threading, going after power? How do you speak to the C-suite? How do you keep high status, power frames, anchor high? We talk about all that psychology, that big ticket people like the Ian Koniak's, the #1 player at Salesforce. What was he doing to get the meeting? The artificial intelligence component brings us to the 3rd thesis, which is the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, blocked AI calling. It is illegal to synthesize the human voice and make an outbound call. It's also illegal to send a fax unsolicited. It's also illegal to send an SMS unsolicited. What are they going to let us do? How are we going to have commerce? This is a free market capitalist economy. What's happening? Well, Europe said no. And then Australia said no also. Now, if you contact a website, put in your information, that's compliant. You can have an AI call them back. A bot can like answer to you. But that's the culture of opt-in. If you opt in for an SMS, you can receive it. But there's still no way for me to build like a Charles Needham bot that sounds and looks like him, because then everyone just call your bank and take your stuff. It's a huge risk. But this guy,
I saw,
Gerard,
like, sorry for jumping like on that topic. Like, I missed that part about the FCC, and thank you for sharing that, because I saw like these amazing like models that just like are getting more and more realistic, and I was like, whoa, this is going to take sales to the next level for cold calling. So you're saying that like all of that is pretty much
all those people are going to pay a lot of money or get sued or fined. It's illegal. You can't do it. It's $150 per impression. I don't know. Like, really quickly, if you blitz out for a day, you're at like 200 grand. So they're going to slap some people's wrists, just like they did with email spam. And it's what Charles said. It's the tragedy of the common. So I think it's killer. And we were positioning this back in the tech powered sales days with Tony Hughes and John Gerard, who was running science with a C, and Quanstrom were saying, hey, imagine I call you with my voice AI, and you have a voice AI that answers it. And when the voice AI calls you, if you, the human, pick up, it says, hey, this is Justin Michael's super intelligence. I'm an AI. I'm calling you. Is that okay? And it's more like the Tipper Gore explicit lyrics. Like, you get the opt-in. You just identify that you're an artificial intelligence. Yeah. So it may go that way. I don't know if Trump will loosen the restrictions. I don't really know what'll happen. But for now, since you can't use artificial intelligence that way, here's how you can use it. 1, the targeting, the triggers. You can use it for the intent. You can use it for what to say, the scripting, the rebuttals. You can have it read the 10K, the 10Q, and the Def14 proxy statement. And you can do that with this tool called Wyzer, WHYZER.ai, which is Jamal Reimer's tool. And he's very cool and gets the enterprise, bringing a point of view with the AI. Now we can analyze the calls we're having with AI, and we can then figure out patterns for omni-channel to take after the call. Then again, there's some restrictions about call recording, but you can record yourself. Every state, every country on earth is different recording opt-ins, but you can record yourself, so you can get some coaching around what you should do to follow up. So what we did in this book, which makes it revolutionary, is we go to the top funnel. We go, are there enterprise people? Well, we got Grant Cardone. Exciting. We got Jeb Blunt. He sold uniforms. Never really did the SaaS thing. We've got cold calling sucks. The rest are guys. Interesting kind of one-on-one techniques. You got Ryan Reiser at Outbound Sales No Flat. You got a lot of stuff that's the base level. Are there more advanced levels of cold calling methodologies and techniques? And ALGO, the acronym, is one. Ask, level, grip, offer. And then how do we spike that with all the AI possible now? So there's a huge tech stack breakdown chapter at the end, which a lot of people collaborated on, because the way we wrote this book, we had like 1,700 people in the book, and we just had them all pre-read it and keep churning it until they, it got to a final result.
Amazing. Quite a few things that you said like really make sense. So like I know like, so when we were doing our cold calling efforts, this was back in like 3 years ago, and obviously AI wasn't there yet. So like, for me, it was like I was like brain dead after having to like review calls, listen to calls, try to pick up things like that I think were not like good. So I think like AI is definitely would have made my job a lot easier back then. And then of course like the whole prospecting part, like just like to find the leads, and also for the scripting part. Like I know like we use AI for cold emailing and LinkedIn outreach to craft those messages. Well, I think like as you said, like it will be very good also for script refining. So those are all some good points. I see a really hot question right now coming from the audience. I'm going to put it up here on the screen. Samantha, how do you see Apple's call screening feature changing the cold calling game long term? Guys, this is you were probably expecting this question, so I'm not surprised it's here.
I will let Justin go first on this one.
No, we got to go to Charles. He refuses to have a nickname. But what were we going to go with? The Prince of Prospecting? Just like to invoke the purple one. We're both wearing purple shirts. Or is yours blue, technically?
Mine's blue. Yeah.
Take us
Prince
away.
of Prospecting, not bad.
That's good.
Well,
how are you going to get through it,
listen, there's so many posts about this on LinkedIn, right? And so much thought leadership. I think the only right disclaimer up front is we don't know. We have no idea. And there's a few different ways that it could go. But if we step back, question one will be adoption, which is, yes, this is very scary if you look at it from the perspective of a cold caller and it looks existential. But at the end of the day, what we've seen is there are people who pick up cold calls and there are people who don't. So as a practical matter, the people who don't, this may actually be a boon to the extent that you now have somebody who, rather than would just send you to voicemail completely, you now have an opportunity to get some kind of messaging in front of them. So from a first principles perspective, this may actually become yet another conversion threshold. So when we look at email, for example, and we see the parallels in these channels, with email, once upon a time, it was the first gate was whether they would open it or not. But now the first gate is, does it even get to the inbox? And so similar here, we're going to have that first gate potentially, if people adopt it, where people get that message and then they go from there. And then there's a high probability people who just take cold calls will just continue to do it. They just don't turn this thing on and nothing changes. So it seems like, I don't know how much this will change the underlying human behavior, but it may actually be a boon to the extent that people who are turning this on, you now have at least an opportunity to get some kind of messaging in front of them. The really interesting thing here is what happens to parallel dialers. Because if you look at the fact that these AI screeners are going to have some kind of conversation on the front end, if you're not there within a second or two, and most of these parallel dialers, you have somewhere between a 2 to 3 second delay. If you're not there for that, you're completely cooked. So I think one of the positives here is a volume, and the same volume that killed email as a channel may get uprooted from cold calling in general if this becomes more mainstream.
Yeah. And like as you said, like that was actually, you brought it up, but I was going to ask, like, do you see a silver lining here? Because for me, that was it. I was like, oh, okay, like there is some good here as well, because all of a sudden, like those 80% that you said, they're going to be able to see something from you, which is not necessarily bad, especially if you do your lead sourcing properly and if you have good data. but yeah, I mean, and the same thing is again going to be is just going back to what you like said at the very beginning. It's not about just like going crazy with volume and just like spamming and blasting. It's about like setting up proper foundations from every pillar along the way, and then those pillars are going to allow you to have a proper foundation with which you're going to be able to book those calls. Because like it's one thing how many calls pick up, but at the end of the day, the ultimate thing you want to do is get closed deals. So it's just going to be more and more targeting, and that's what we see with emails happening more and more. And just like going against it is just like swimming against the tide. So like you either adapt or you need to get like Michael Phelps style strong in order to keep on progressing.
Well, there's a problem here is that everyone needs to learn to write and communicate, because your AI can surface the personalization for that iOS 26 tip, and it can move really fast. Like in nanoseconds, you can query ChatGPT and then boom, you can have some personalization. However, it becomes an arms race for who can blitz that out. And there's a lot of generic tells where you can easily tell that it's being done by a GPT. And then on top of that, that's why we've really promoted this idea of heuristics, which are sort of meta frameworks above the linguistics and boundaries and ways to train AI speech, because that's going to be way more important to actually stand out. Like, whoa, this one was actually by a human and these are synthetics. And so you could have like a synthetic script on there. So if you have phone number data that's accurate, like Charles is saying from TitanX, and then you call in and then you're smart enough or savvy enough to have the hyper personalization or personalization even relevancy, you might beat a machine that's spitting out really hyper personalized looking synthetic strings to pass through the IO26. I have a a Pixel, and everyone can block me now. I don't have an iPhone. Yeah, so you can all just turn this off now. It's all good. My brother works at Google, though, to my defense.
All right. I mean, you definitely, like what you're saying is definitely making sense. Like, just like one more thing that I'd like to just like quickly cover is that you kind of did an intro for is the opener. So like I always see like on TikTok, it's practically, other than LinkedIn, is the only platform that I use. And I see all of these cold callers always coming up, that are like, cold calling and solving puzzles along the way, and just like doing these and just like showing how they close deals. Like, what are like just like going back to the basics? Like, what is your approach or part of the Justin Michael method? How do you, like, any tips you can give on opening a cold call? I mean, it's a $1 billion question, literally. But
I just call up and I'm like, "This is Justin Michael," and they just get out their credit card.
For you, it's easy.
The damnedest thing. No, I'm just kidding. It's not easy. It's never.
Just start reading their credit card after they
give me a review and buy my book.
You just Bitcoin transfer it. Boom. No, it's never easy. And it's funny. Even when you work for Salesforce or LinkedIn, it can be even harder because they have brand recognition, but then you have to kind of prove yourself because they kind of already know your product. So, the majority of the world has standardized on this thing called permission-based openers, which is a technique that comes from the 1990s. If you ask Todd Capone, my bootcamp trainer at Salesforce, who wrote the transparency sale, maybe that technique, everything comes before 1910. There's nothing new. And there's nothing wrong with permission. So what we did in this book is we thought like Einstein, unified theory of everything. So if Alex uses a PBO and he closes a deal and gets revenue in, he's right. We need a theory that accounts for the fact that, like, if you call and you sing Justin Bieber, what do you mean? And you get a meeting, like, you're right. So there's status, there's tonality, there's downtones, there's positioning, there's frames, which are sort of the meta. Now, I have a million debates with people. It's not what you say, it's the tone. Go on a date and say, "Hey, great to meet you. Would you like to go see my meth lab?" Good tone. Not going to work well. Charles, take it away. PBOs or non-PBOs? People are laughing everywhere, but that was a tough one.
The meth lab lime slays, by the way, with the right tonality. If you downtone in the right spot,
Breaking Bad,
you close 100% of the time. 100%.
Just mention meth.
One of the really interesting things Justin and I had in common is we both have a background in music, specifically in jazz. And one of the most interesting things about jazz is whether something is a right note or a wrong note is often a function of who is the person playing it. So if you listen to like a John Coltrane or like a Thelonious Monk, they're playing wrong notes all over the place. But it sounds right because they have a degree of conviction in what they're doing and confidence that it's leading in the right direction. So when we came together to take a look at the unified theory of everything, what we found is that most of the orthodox assessments of cold call openers were very superficial. And when we took a look on aggregate for the things that were successful, we found a couple things. So one was shifting somebody from system 1 to system 2. What we mean by that is most people, when they are ambushed by something that they're not expecting, which by definition a cold call is, they start freaking out. They have a million thoughts in their mind. Is this call coming? Was I expecting this call? Is it my kids? Are my parents okay? Right? Like they have all these thoughts. So they're freaking out and they're not even listening to you. So step one is you got to calm them down. You do that through a combination of tonality, pacing, and then also answering some of those questions. So the first thing I do is, hey, this is Charles from Titan X. You were not expecting my call. So check. I'm starting to calm them down. They're like, okay, this isn't like all the head noise about, was I expecting this call? Is this an emergency? Get that out of the way. So step one is you move them from system 1 to system 2 so they're actually listening. Step 2 is you have to engender a degree of curiosity. So part of what happened with a lot of these PBOs, it's not really a problem with asking permission. There's nothing inherently wrong with being polite. But once somebody has heard that, humans are amazing pattern recognition machines. So they hear that, they bucket salesperson, and then they stop listening again. So the unified theory of everything from an opener is you need to do two things. You need to calm them down, and then you need to engender curiosity. So we do this in algo. So hey, this is Charles. You were not expecting my call. It's the first time I reached you. I had a question that may seem a little bit out of left field. So now the next thing is, ooh, I wonder what this question is. Now I'm listening. Now I'm leaning in. So that's the unified theory of everything. It's not PBOs. It's not non-PBOs. It's not 13 seconds or 32.5 seconds.
I was going
Calm
to
the
ask,
person down.
is there like a
Make them
time
curious.
limit, like for the first line that you say, that like when it's too long or too short, But
I mean,
Wow.
I guess like Connect and Sell said it was 7 seconds. I remember in Something About Mary, it was 8-minute abs. The guy's like 7-minute abs. Jordan Belfort says 5 seconds. Connect and Sell 7 seconds. I always said 3 heartbeats. It's like, how long is it going to take? But yeah, Charles is absolutely right. There's this thing called the Zeigarnik effect that I talk about in like the neural pathing and neural selling elements of this, which your brain has to close open loops. So the minute you have, hey, I have a question out of left field, the brain just goes, curiosity kills the cat. You're like, what is it? It's like the season of Lost, 9 seasons to figure out what the heck the thing is, or like the Netflix formula. And that was kind of what Sandler said with don't spill your candy in the lobby. You got 5 amazing slides, leave the 4th slide back, leave something out, leave them hanging, wanting more. The way I do it, though, is a little different than Charles, but it still unifies. So we had this formula algo where it's ask-based openers, which is a little different than permission. So it doesn't matter whether you use permission on the front end or their full name, or the one I had, which is route, ruin, multiply, because what you're not doing is, hey, Alex, Justin Michael from Acme, the reason for my call, and I just talk over you and waterboard you, and you never get a chance to respond, which is actually kind of aggressive and suffocating the traditional way of doing it. And also, if you think system 1, hijacking the amygdala, the croc brain, and then trying to get the neocortex to slow it down, right? If I'm talking over you with logic and reasoning, there's no time for you to slow down and hear what I have to say. So my philosophy for permission-based openers, which I cracked in 2007, the tender age of 27, I remember those days. Yeah, I would just say the full name. So I don't even have your full name up on the screen, but it's something awesome.
All right, good luck. Good luck with it. It's Aleksandar Besarovic.
So, hey, is this Aleksandar Besarovic? You probably correct me. I just use John Malkovich for all the Viches to the Slavic names, So my Russian name would have been Zhlotkin. So I'm good. I don't speak Russian. I just look Russian. People bring me Russian menus when I travel in Europe. So where I'm going with this is I try your full name and you're like, oh, let's put him out of his misery. At least he tried. And that's a big pattern interrupt because that's, again, system 1 calming, a full name. Now, it may be triggering. You might be like, whoa, is this the FBI? Like, why is he saying my full name? And then I just kind of, with route, ruin, multiply, it's for calling bigger enterprise accounts. So I call you and you're the VP of marketing. Go, hey, who heads up your mobile marketing? And you're like, oh, I'm the marketing leader, but that's a separate team. Cool. Who is it? That's John Candy.
Yeah.
And I get routed right out of the top. So kind of like there's 3 things you would do when you call someone. You would try to literally sell them something if you were very aggressive. Number 2 would be the 90s style of like, hey, I just want to get your time, Tuesday or Thursday, close for time. But what I figured out is there's a third intention, which is just like, who am I supposed to be talking to over there? Like lost in the city, like, are you the person? I looked on LinkedIn, there's 32 VPs of marketing. So I say the full name and then I ask who's in charge of the thing. And then I get tons of referrals. And for environments where you get very low connects, it's helpful because it's more like, oh, hey, Alex, someone picked up, like, can you do me a favor? Why? Who the heck are you? Well, hey, I've been calling your whole marketing team and I don't know who's in charge of mobile marketing. Is that you? Yeah, why? Or no, that's Sally. So that's sort of like the opener that I developed. But what Charles is talking about with pacing and tonality and mirroring is really important too. So I think they both work. I think the main thing is that by neuroscience law, if you're talking, you're out of control. If they're talking, you're in control.
Yeah.
So things that, I mean, it's just a law of the brain. People tune out when you talk at them.
And what I like about these tips, these are like evergreen tips, because this is like human psychology, this is cognitive behavior, this is like the brain. This is how we function. And I mean, the things that you're saying now were relevant in 1999, and will be relevant in 5 years from now, in 20 years from now, forever. Unless AI really changes our brains or we start implementing chips, but so these are evergreen things that definitely are going to stay there. And obviously, just one of the things that I preach in general is, also like multi-channel. So that is something that I think that really increases conversion rates. So do you guys think that using multi-channel for follow-ups in cold call, because everybody needs to follow up. I mean, even with cold calling, do you follow up with cold calls or do you follow up with emails through LinkedIn? What is the follow-up methodology that you guys see working best?
You want me to go, Justin? Okay. So I guess I would say, Alex, the answer, as always, is it depends. So are you talking about if you don't get a hold of somebody, or have you already spoken to them?
So you've already spoken to somebody, they've expressed moderate interest, or they're like, yeah, hit me up in next week. It's going to be a better time. Are you going to call them? And you call them, they don't reply. How do you push? Do you use multi-channel?
Yes. So I think this is a really important time to address something that we talked about in the book, which is a little controversial, which is we use the phrase meetings don't matter. And most people hear that and they go, oh no, I can see your eyes narrowing a little bit, right? What does that mean? Isn't the whole function of cold calling to schedule meetings? Well, yes, but only if the meetings, to your point, are going to lead to revenue. And so what ends up happening with a lot of SDR programs is meetings are set as the North Star. And the intention of that is clear, which is if you have meetings, you have a higher probability of bringing in customers. But what ends up happening a lot of times in these programs is because SDRs are incentivized to show that they book meetings, that's exactly what they do, but not necessarily with people who are buyers. So what ends up happening, and I've seen this inside of programs all the time, they say, Charles, we're killing it, we're scheduling all these meetings. And then I look and I audit the call logs, and what's happening is people are having conversations with somebody who's on the go, about to go into a meeting. Can I call you back in a week? Sure. And they send a calendar invite and they say, I booked a meeting. Look at me, I'm great at this. But what really needs to happen is business development programs need to recognize that the benefit of cold calling is the bilateral communication. Alex, if somebody sends you an email that's not relevant to you, in most cases, you're going to say, unsubscribe or take me off your list. What has the emailer learned? Absolutely nothing. But when you're cold calling, you have a unique opportunity to have a bilateral communication. If somebody's not interested, you can find out more about why, and you can bucket them for appropriate follow-up. And so what ends up happening is you have this dynamic exercise, and Ryan Reiser calls this bucketing, where every conversation you have allows you to redistribute your lead pool. And in the case of somebody you described to me who says, this is something is interesting, can you send me some more information? That becomes something that we call an activated lead. So that's somebody who is engaged, they wants to find out more. So you send them an email, but you know full well that they're probably not going to read the email or respond. But what you can do is, rather than trying to 8 mile, one shot, one opportunity, force the meeting on them, you can do sort of a pattern interrupt. Cool, I'll send you some information. If I don't hear back from you, it's cool if I give you a call in a week. Yeah, sure. You call them up, you say, hey, Alex, this is Charles. We spoke about a week ago and you requested a little bit more information. You shut up. Yeah. What's up, Charles? Well, I was hoping to pick up our conversation. Did you have a minute, or were you open to scheduling something in a few days? And so either way, you're moving the ball down the field. And what we've seen is that those activated leads convert anywhere from a 3 to 4x multiple from your cold. And so the idea is to have conversations that either progress or you kick somebody out, right? Which is totally fine. Like if you look at the Chet
You just
Holmes
have to keep
buyer
the motion
pyramid,
going. Just keep
exactly.
keep the ball rolling, and it's a game of numbers. And you want to push the lead through the funnel, but you need to have a defined funnel and defined steps and checkpoints that you want them to achieve before you take their money.
And more importantly, at any given time, only about 10% of your market is actually in the window to purchase your services. So if you're familiar with the Chet Holmes buyer pyramid, 3% are buying right now. Those people are probably coming inbound anyway, or you're catching them early. 7% are open to it, but then you have 30% not thinking about it, 30%, I don't remember the exact distribution right now, but you guys get the idea. But the thing is, and Jerry Hill and Chris Beal have talked about this, outbound is a long-term game. The math they use is if 8 to 9% are in market any given quarter, you win 50% of those. Then the idea is that each quarter you're marching. So I think they talk about a 3-year, 12-quarter plan. Because if you can capture 5% of market share every quarter, then in 3 years you're the leader in your market. But you have these VPs of sales and these bozos that are brought in to turn everything around this quarter, and then they try to jam meetings and they demand outcomes right now, and it just clogs the whole system up and burns brand, and all kinds of stuff happens. I'm getting heated. I'll turn to Justin.
I'm like one of those guys that is very impulsive, and for me it was we're not seeing good enough results. We tried this for 1 quarter, and I'm not happy with the results, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna call it a loss, and we're gonna move on to something else. But
Alex, no, time to turn it around, my friend. I just called you out.
Yeah, honestly, and it struck home. That really resonates, because we're in the fast-pacing world, and everything is very fast-paced. But some things are a process, and what you said with the whole pyramid or diagram is that it's somebody today is in that 3%, but somebody else that's in those 30% next quarter is going to be in that 3%. So it is like a machine that is always recycle, bringing new leads. So it is a cycle. Then of course there are a lot of topics that we could cover here, from billing, purchasing periods within the year, when procurement is done, what types of deals you're doing, seasonality. But guys, I usually try and keep these lives in the 45-minute range. I know we could probably go on for a few hours, and just and I know I prepared a list of questions. I have 10 more questions I wanted to ask you guys, but it looks like I'm just gonna have to read your book. So, and
read the book. Thank you.
Speaking of that, if people listening here, if you guys are doing, if you are experimenting or have been doing, or have experience in cold calling, you had the chance here to hear to get some gold advice from these guys, and that's a teaser of what's probably in the book. So I'm going to commit to reading the book, and there you go, there's the book, and to actually giving my thoughts on it on LinkedIn. So it's a big commitment. It's a big one, but I need to identify my mistakes in the past, and I see Ksenia just shared the link as well. So with that, Justin, Charles,
do we have
questions here?
Yeah, do we have audience questions, or?
We do. We definitely do. Do you, if you have some more time, I could pop some up.
That works. I think I have like 11 more minutes. You know,
All
people
right,
thought
man.
that I was actually Neuralinked. I went with that for a while. I was like, yeah, I was one of the first Neuralinks in 2009. Because like when I started, it was Salesborg, cyborgs in sales. Oh, we have one.
Here we go. So, do you folks think that if we combine parallel dialing with multiple numbers plus high intent data leads, that's going to solve the problem? Now, the problem we were talking about at that time was just like dialers, like how like with the Apple identifier, the power dialing is
Yeah.
not making any sense.
So about 7 years ago, I was a huge proponent of get cell phone data and then or get, you know, the best data you could get, like Zoom Info and Lead IQ, and then call it with parallel assisted 4 to 10 at a time. And at the time, that kind of worked before you had these kind of filtration algorithms on the other side. So now I was talking with Orem, who was reading the book. Colin over at Orem, who runs their sales team. They have two modes. They have a power dialer that dials one at a time, and they have a parallel dialer. And in the book, we talk about a priority one lead. So let me step back. Connect and Sell looked at 10 million phone numbers, and their stats say that 50% of the meetings were set by fully navigated dials. So these mean phone trees, IVRs, dial by name directory. A big reason is in the pandemic around 2021, everyone just took their office line, like extension 248, and routed it to their cell phone. So that's a good thing. 7% of global phone numbers in these databases like Cognizant and Zoom Info are cell phones. So it's a bit of a red herring because there's a lot of really good switchboards and direct dials that exist. And as Charles said, only 20% of people pick up. So you have this environment then where if you have a priority one clean lead and you know it works, you would just dial them 7 times over a period of how many days, Charles? 10 days?
Typically 2 weeks is a recommendation. Yeah.
2 weeks, right? And then if that's not the case, then you could, for P2, priority 2, you could run parallel assisted dialer or do omni-channel. And so we kind of define definitions, and correct me here if I'm wrong, but also there's an idea, I think they call it Boost Connect, but you can also do time of day prediction, which is helpful. So it's getting more complicated and sophisticated. But Charles, can you clean me up on this topic? I might have hit it.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a question I even asked early on in the process when it comes to, if you have high intent data and you can dial it faster, isn't that a net positive? So it's worth explicating on some of the drawbacks of doing that. So when you have what we define as high intent data, you get anywhere from 20 to 30% connect rates, which means if you put it another way, you would expect to get a pickup once out of every 3 to every 5 dials on average. So if you parallel dial that data, there is a very real risk of hanging up on somebody who would otherwise answer the phone. And when you do that enough times, you risk that person becoming somebody who no longer answers the phone. So note these categories are dynamic, right? Like the classic example I always use is once somebody applies for a mortgage, they get hit by innumerable calls offering them money. And then that person becomes somebody who doesn't pick up the phone. So you don't want to parallel dial people who have high intent because you may turn them into low intent. The second thing, and that was awkward on purpose, because what we found is that there's approximately a 2 to 3 second delay when you parallel dial, and your conversion rate dips by about 1% a second. So put another way, if you have a 10% meeting book rate, you're now down to 7. Also, you have something called a patch rate. So let's say you have a 5% connect rate. About half of those people will hang up during that delay period. So you'll go from a 5% connect rate to a 2% connect rate, which means now you have to dial more, which means your numbers are going to go to spam, which means your connect rate is going to drop even further. So long story short, please do not parallel dial anything that's high intent. If you want to parallel dial the ones that aren't high intent, where you have a working number, knock yourself out. But I mean, realistically, parallel dialer is not the way we think to go.
So it's not the future of cold calling. It's in the past.
They get that. So they're starting to offer power dial modes and predictive time of day modes. And these same companies that were going for the 4 to 10x see this, and they're adapting the best that they can.
Yeah. One thing that I was just thinking as you guys were talking, I was kind of just like recapping on everything we spoke, and just like silently in my mind. And one of the things that I really saw as a use case that would make sense. So obviously with AimFox, like you can automate a whole lot of LinkedIn outreach. So we're a LinkedIn outreach tool for B2B sales. Now, where the use case that I really see making sense is, imagine, so you're using a CRM, be it HubSpot, be it Salesforce, and we're actually launching a HubSpot integration this week, I think. And Salesforce is coming up as well. So native integrations with AimFox. So like imagine a scenario where like, you cold call somebody, they pick up, and you automate a sequence for every lead that picks up, that you talk to, that they get a connection request automatically on LinkedIn. Now, that's, for example, for me, like a use case that, or you can choose any other trigger you want, be it a pickup, be it a classified as interested. But like that's a use case that I see, like where multi-channel can, you can do it manually, but like obviously, like, if you're an SDR or if you're a manager of an SDR team, you want to streamline as much of this as possible. But that's, for example, a use case where I see cold calling and AimFox working really, really well together with an integration like this. So it was just the reflection point that I realized. I was like, oh,
No, I like
I'm going to
that.
talk to you guys.
I mean,
I'm going to talk to you guys after
that's the whole idea, is to blend together.
Yeah, because we're always like looking to blend into cold emailing. Because for us, like cold emailing, then like LinkedIn outreach, and then blending the two together. Cold calling is something that I feel our audience is overlooking a little bit. So
I mean, everyone wants to do emails, and the sequencers are huge. And I've written that book in the past. But the problem is that, like I said, you get 1 in 1,000 that work. You get one meeting in 1,000 attempts now. So unless you want to,
that's about accurate.
If you want to become a GTM engineer, get 5 domains, 3 emails each, warm them up for 6 weeks, get Instantly, get Smart Lead, and then master clay tables, enrichment waterfalls, end-to-end workflows, and turn yourself into an engineer. I'm not that technical. I have high TQ. I'm technically curious, but that starts to become like a marketer, programmer, techie person, which is great. More power to you, like Benjamin type people.
Tech barrier in the last two. Now, all these tools you mentioned are amazing. Clay gives you so many options, like Instantly as well. But like just like the technological barrier to succeed now is getting higher and higher and higher, which means that like a lot less people are succeeding, which is like good, because like only the best will prevail. But like it's also greatly reducing the scale of everything. So I'm definitely down with you. And like what you said, like, and if you get one meeting in 1,000 emails, that's good numbers,
So in the book we have 14 chapters, and at the end there's like an AI power play, and so there's a bunch of clay flows and things in the book for you depending on your skill level. But somebody say, okay, I'm going to take 20 hours and learn clay, or like my friend Nathan trains people, takes 100 hours. I'm like, well, I'll just take 20 hours and get, I don't know, a bunch of pipeline and meetings. So we only have like 4 or 5 minutes left. So what else is on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, guys, like I think, like honestly, that we've covered a fair amount of things already. If we have some, let me see if we have some like last minute comments that we want to bring up. I see some questions. I think we already talked about this. Yeah. By the way, yes, I see a question here. By the way, people are loving the book, and I see some questions here regarding the recording. So yes, there will be a recording available of this, so you can rewatch and pause sections that interest you. So yeah, this is going to be on YouTube. This is going to be on LinkedIn. So Charles, Justin, thank you so much, guys, for joining us today and for telling and for educating our user base and people outside of our user base about cold calling. And I just like, honestly, I really enjoy these sessions, because my goal as a founder of a lead generation tool for LinkedIn is not only to focus about LinkedIn, but I want to really like empower our users to try other types of methods, because it's you need to put everything together to get the most results. So guys, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch with you, and hopefully we might do one more of these webinars sometime in the future. When you have a new book
Awesome.
out.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks,
Thank
Alex.
you, guys. Thank you.